that's part of why we're having this conversation, is to maybe shake up how people are doing their business. And you might be sitting there saying, I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't have time. You don't have time not to. If I can stop buying my own story that I'm not good at numbers. And it was amazing to me how many mistakes I caught. And by the time I went through that process, the gift in it was just that I just didn't believe my story anymore. I'm like, if I can catch these mistakes with my story that I don't understand the numbers and I'm not good at numbers, anybody can do this. I didn't want to do it. That's not how I saw myself spending the time.
It's boring.
But you can do this. And it's part of your job. We just had this conversation yesterday in my group program. Sometimes we forget as entrepreneurs, we get so used to this idea of having this freedom and flexibility and the ability to make money and do what we want when we want, that we get a little entitled to our freedom. And we forget that we have activities that we do that allow us to have the freedom and flexibility and money that we have. So it's your job.
It kind of is, you know. You are the business owner. You have taken on that responsibility.
Hey, you leader, entrepreneur, business owner, solopreneur, whatever you call yourself, we know you're a visionary business builder, wealth seeker looking to combine a passion for doing good with leading consciously. It's time to shift from a traditional focus of pure wealth accumulation to one that integrates well-being and fulfillment. This is the Conscious Edge podcast, and I'm Alicia St. Germain, entrepreneur and coach. Along with my friend and wellness advocate, Jonathan Duggar, we're diving into what it means to embody radical self-acceptance while still evolving to lead with compassion and kindness. We're sharing our own experiences and expertise as we unpack imposter syndrome, perfectionism, procrastination, and all the other things that lead to burnout and keep you from experiencing pure joy, business growth, and maximum impact. This is a safe and supportive space to explore what it means to be a human creating wealth and building a business. You're here for a purpose, and it's time to shine your light. So here we go. How do you know if you need a bookkeeper, an accountant, a CFO, a CPA? We're breaking down all of those things today because I really want you to move away from just being reactive in your business and really understand your financials. So I have with me Jenn Boss again this week. If you listen to our last episode, we were talking about my journey working with her, and you're just changing the way that I operate my business. I'm so grateful to you, Jenn.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad to be on this journey with you and so happy to be with you again today.
So if you didn't hear last week's episode, or I think that actually it was 2 weeks ago, just tell everybody in case they're brand new here and they didn't hear that last episode. Who are you? What do you do?
Sure. My name is Jenn Boss. My company's called Peak to Peak Solutions, and I provide outsourced CFO and accounting services. And I really lean into that more coaching aspect with my clients as well, of just helping them problem solve whatever financial issues that they're having in their small businesses.
And I'm Alicia St. Germain. I did forget to introduce myself. I'm just so excited to talk about this. I am founder of The Conscious Edge, and you're listening to The Conscious Edge podcast. If you are brand new here, I just want to say welcome. We talk about everything that is related to building a business and creating wealth. So this goes for anything from mindset to strategy. Today, we're going to focus a little bit more on really the strategy and tactic in your business and who you need to help your business stay not just financially compliant, but actually thrive in really understanding. We were talking last time about how you use your financials to be intentional in what actions, what decisions that you make in your business, and what options you have, as opposed to being really restrictive. very often when I am working with women entrepreneurs, they come to me and every tax season rolls around. Everybody is like, cannot do their minds. They can't do their exercises anymore in the program. They're like, I got to get my taxes done first.
Yeah.
And every week I'll talk to them. They're like, I'm doing my taxes. I'm doing my taxes. I'm like, how long are you doing your taxes for? But also I can relate because I was someone who didn't do anything until the end of the year and created spreadsheets for my CPA and didn't know if I was doing it right. And then ended up late. During the pandemic, I was late filing and I got some pretty hefty fines and I hated that feeling. So I got a bookkeeper. That worked for a little bit until that company closed. And then I found you. So one of the questions I had asked you was like, okay, there's bookkeepers, there's CFOs, there's CPAs. What are all the different levels of people in your business? When do you need them? This is what we're going to dive into. When do you need them? Should you do it yourself? All that stuff. So let's talk about that today.
Yeah.
So let's just define them first. Let's start there.
For sure. For sure. So bookkeeper, if we think about what bookkeeping is to kind of start with. So bookkeeping is the practice of keeping your books. So organizing your finances, tracking your revenue and expenses is kind of the most simplest aspect of that so that we can issue financial statements and prepare taxes. So that's like from a very foundational aspect. That's what bookkeeping is. And the bookkeeper is going to be the person who's performing those functions for you. So that might be the business owner who's doing their own bookkeeping. That might be a business that has an internal bookkeeper, or a lot of times you'll see like an office manager who also keeps the books. That can be a really common setup, doing those basic bookkeeping functions. And then you also might see an outsourced firm, like an accounting firm that might provide bookkeeping services in order to keep your books.
Okay. So that's like,
and a bookkeeper. Yeah, that's like base level. And it can be like, it can actually be very skilled. So like the technical aspects of bookkeeping can be incredibly simple, but it can also scale up pretty dramatically just depending on what the business needs.
Okay.
And so it can be more retroactive, like we're just classifying expenses. This is what happened and this is what the expenses and the income is. And it can also extend into paying bills, vendor management, accounts receivable, invoicing, collections, and a lot of like very tactile task related things as well. So there's a lot of scope there.
So at any level, brand new, getting started, one is solopreneur, whoever it is, there always has to be bookkeeping. And I imagine it's a lot easier to do it when you get started from the beginning, but that's not what I did. I, at the end of the year, then made a spreadsheet that I didn't know if I did it right. So what is it that you recommend for someone who is like I was, who doesn't really have any good bookkeeping practices?
So my recommendation is always to set some sort of regular schedule for your bookkeeping. I will say with some companies, like a quarterly bookkeeping update is just fine. It doesn't always have to be monthly. If you are a smaller entrepreneur just getting started, I think you can have some regularity there. It's very helpful, but it doesn't always have to be as frequent as sometimes we think it has to be. So some sort of regular bookkeeping schedule with some sort of system or platform that helps you keep things organized. My preference is that people use a bookkeeping software. So that is, most people use QuickBooks Online, but there's a number of different business-oriented softwares out there that are great. If you are just starting out and you want to use Excel or build things in Excel, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just more manual. And it can be a little more, in my opinion, difficult to maintain versus paying for a software like QuickBooks or one of the others.
Which a lot of the softwares now with technology integrate, and it saves so much time.
So much time.
And I will say, I do have a personal opinion on it. Make sure that you own, like, I don't want to say own your books, but I ran into the situation where the company was keeping my books on a proprietary software. And so when they became insolvent, my data got trapped in their system. Whereas if I had my own QuickBooks, let's say, where I pay to have the account, it would come with me no matter who I was working with. So that's kind of my cautionary tale on that one. Hindsight's 2020 though.
Yeah. And we made it all work.
Yeah.
Now we've got you on QuickBooks.
Now we're on QuickBooks. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So then the next layer, because I really was asking, the context of how this came up was I was like, what is it that you do? Like, who are you? Are you just, are you a bookkeeper? Are you? And so you started going through all the gamuts of things that you did.
Yeah.
And I realized how many layers are in finance within a company.
There's a lot of layers.
So the next tier.
So yeah, so you're going to hear like bookkeeper and some of these terms cross over a little, and then you're going to hear accountant. An accountant might have their CPA license and might not. Typically, the difference with an accountant versus a bookkeeper is going to be a little more skill related. So somebody who really understands a lot of the technical aspects of accounting, because it actually can be quite complex. There is a lot of nuance to it. There are a lot of rules and kind of things you have to abide by. So in my opinion, the accountant is going to be a little more skilled at handling more complex accounting situations and entries. They typically also have more of an analytical side where they're going to be looking to understand the numbers and what they imply, whereas bookkeeping is really the practice of organizing the financials. Now, again, you might find a bookkeeper who has a good analysis piece. Oftentimes what I find is really good bookkeepers are excellent organizers, and they are not always the best strategists. It's actually one common thing. I've actually talked about this several times recently with clients is small business owners who have a bookkeeper. As the small business owners starting to get more educated on their numbers, they start asking more questions of the bookkeeper that are more analytical. And then they become frustrated when the bookkeeper can't answer them. And they'll tell me, well, I have this bookkeeper, but all they give me is the numbers. They don't tell me what they mean, or they're not giving me heads up about things. They don't see things coming. And typically what I say is like, it is wonderful that you want that, like big thumbs up there. That's fantastic. But your bookkeeper may not be the person to deliver you that information. So again, sometimes those do cross over. But a lot of times the bookkeepers are really great at managing details and organizing chaos and putting things in the right buckets. And then the accountant, where that really fits in, is with more of that strategic thought or with more of the technical aspects that might be behind some of those accounting related things.
Can you give an example of like a technical aspect?
Sure. So I have a client who owned actually a piece of real estate with another person, and they bought out their partner on that. And so how to enter that and properly reflect the equity buyout on the balance sheet is a very technical, because there is proper ways of doing things. And there are rules surrounding how equity should be displayed that's in accordance with the corporate structure and partnership interests and all of that. So that's a very technical aspect that a bookkeeper, again, they might have that background to be able to do, or you might need to consult somebody who really has that technical chops to be able to understand how all of that should be recorded.
Now, when would someone bring in an accountant? Like, would they consult an accountant for those technical things, or should they be working with an accountant at a certain level? How do they decide when that needs to happen?
It's a little fluid. So I would say if you have a more robust company that has more accounting needs, that's past basic bookkeeping, probably your bookkeeper is probably more on the accountant skill set. So even if they're doing bookkeeping related tasks for you, they're probably going to have a deeper skill set where you would really call them more of an accountant, even though they're doing bookkeeping, if that makes sense. You also might be in a situation where you just have somebody who you can consult, or who the bookkeeper can consult with some of those more technical questions. And a lot of times that might be your CPA firm. So again, that accountant might have a CPA license. They might not. I, for example, consider myself, I'm an accountant. I went to school for it, have all the years of experience, but I don't have my CPA license. So that person who you consult might be titled as a fractional CFO or as a CPA. And really underneath that, there's an accounting expertise. So they're kind of an accountant at the core.
Okay. So then CPA,
Okay. Yeah. CPA is an accountant who has sat through and completed successfully the CPA license. So the CPA testing is kind of like the law exams or, the doctor exams that you take before you're fully licensed. I think it takes a year. I think it's 4 sections. This goes back when I was in school, so over 15 years ago. So at that time in Missouri, you had to have 150 credit hours. So typically you had your master's and then you had to sit for that CPA exam, which again, usually took about a full year to study for, take, and pass. And so that is just a much deeper technical understanding, typically extending into areas like tax or audit or public accounting, where that CPA license really helps bolster your technical expertise in those areas.
So accountants do not file taxes, but CPAs do.
It's not actually that cut and dry either. I wish that it was.
See, I don't know. So I'm asking.
So I think how it works specifically with taxes is you do have to have a CPA that will sign off on them, but you might have internal staff who are accountants who don't have their CPA who are actually doing a lot of the prep work on that.
I gotcha. I have,
Yes.
I thought there was like bookkeeping and a CPA. And that was what there was.
There's a lot of variations between that. And honestly, even the titles that, people have sometimes is more commensurate with like you might have somebody who's called a CFO in a business because they're like the only person running the business's finances because it's a very small company, but they might not actually have the technical experience or background in a different situation. So
I get it.
Sometimes the definitions and the titles shift a little bit depending on the situation or the size of the business.
Yeah. And I get that. And part of me is like sitting here embarrassed because I didn't realize that. How does someone get through from my early 20s to 44? So like over 20 years of entrepreneurship and not know all of these nuances is what I'm sitting here asking myself. But if I've made it through, then there are other people in my shoes.
Absolutely. And I think, again, that goes to when you start a business, it's not because you have this typically, like most people don't start a business because they're like, I love running businesses and I run a really good business. And so I'm going to do this thing. It's because they want to go do something that they love. And so they don't always have that, either the accounting experience or knowledge or business piece. So there is a lot of depth in that field.
Do you think, I'm going to throw her a curveball. She doesn't know I'm going to ask this, but do you think, or what's your opinion on why most businesses fail? Do you think it's because that they might not understand this aspect?
That's a really good question. I don't think it's quite that black and white, but I think it's related.
Okay.
So I think that when I see a lot of businesses struggling or when they come to me because they're struggling, it's because the easy access of accounting help is really bifurcated like that. Like they have a bookkeeper that does the books. And again, like I said, typically that bookkeeper is good at the bookkeeping and not always good at the strategy, the forecasting those pieces. And they typically have a tax CPA who is filing their taxes, and they meet with twice a year to have like a strategy conversation that's really focused around business taxes and mitigating tax liability. And that's what they have.
Mm-hmm.
And the business owner is in the trenches alone, trying to run a business and trying to make financial decisions and manage cash flow and put together a budget. And most small businesses, like if you look at any large corporation, it has a CFO and it has 150 accountants and bookkeepers and staff and payroll clerks and AR clerks and all of this infrastructure there. And then a small business typically has the owner and maybe a bookkeeper and typically a tax person. And so that business owner is alone trying to figure out how to run a business and how to make really good decisions surrounding their finances. And typically they don't have the background for that. And so I think that's where a lot of businesses struggle. That's where my heart is. That's what I love so much about what I do is I always say I fill that gap. So I'm the gap between your accounting, even though sometimes I do provide accounting, but I'm that gap between the accounting and between your tax CPA so that I can help problem solve and strategize in that day-to-day operations. And I think not having that is hard.
I think you've said outsourced CFO.
Outsourced CFO. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that goes like, what's a CFO? Again, in a corporate setting, that CFO, the chief financial officer, is going to be the person in charge of all of the financial operations of the company. It's typically going to be a very strategic role. Again, planning, budgeting, forecasting, modeling, very relationship based in a corporate setting. In a smaller business where that context comes in place is, again, that small business might need somebody to help with those tasks, help with budgeting, help with problem solving, and isn't large enough to justify having, employing a full-time CFO for them. And so finding a firm that does offer outsourced CFO services can be really helpful because you can get somebody to help with some of those tasks. And if you can find one that leans more towards the coaching or advisory side, like I do, where sometimes those business owners, like they need to talk about their accounts receivable process, something very in the weeds and very specific, but fixing that will fix their cash flow issue. So if you can find somebody who's willing to kind of get in the trenches with you and talk about like more financial operations, which can become really impactful, those people are hard to find, like somebody who gets kind of in those weeds and understands those pieces, but that can be really transformative in a small business's success.
Oh, for sure. I think it's fascinating what you have been working with me on. And that's really what I see. You're doing bookkeeping for me. She's not available. Sorry. She has a wait list. Let me put it this way. She has a wait list. So, and her clients don't leave because they love her. And so again, our friend, Jonathan, you all know Jonathan. He's my usual regular co-host, calls her a unicorn because she has this organizational skills of the bookkeeper accountant side, but she also has the strategic CFO side too. And she has experience working with real estate companies and helping people solve different types of problems in their business. And so, you're helping me solve the problem this year was making sure that I'm being paid personally for the work and time and energy I'm spending on this mission that I'm on. And so we sat down and we had a conversation. We looked through all of my numbers. And I remember you were not attached to me, you being my bookkeeper. You're like, you can go find another bookkeeper. That's fine. I just need the information. And so we sat down and we looked at the numbers. We did some scenario running. We made some decisions. So I've experienced what that's like to have someone else who it's different than a mastermind. Like when I go to my mastermind, we're all a bunch of creatives, like who love marketing, who are like, let's go change the world. And nobody's looking at what it's going to cost. But you're like, okay, yeah, let's change the world. And
how do we do it?
How do we do it in a way that keeps our business healthy? And I love that holistic, you have such a holistic approach and just giving me the information so I can make really good decisions. So anything else that you would add to this for business owners?
Yeah, the one thing that I would add is I think you probably need those different types of people. Like at different times in your business, you might need all of those. But what I would caution is that it's probably not going to be the same person. So again, I have a lot of business owners that will come with frustrations like that their bookkeeper isn't providing that analysis. If they're doing the bookkeeping really well, let them be a good bookkeeper and then find somebody to problem solve and provide the strategy. And likewise, you really need a good tax accountant. I'm not it, for example. Like, I know enough to be dangerous. I know enough to help my clients with some basic stuff. But tax is its own beast and the rules are always changing. And you certainly want somebody who can strategize and be really strategic with limiting tax liability in the various ways that you can. So you need a really good CPA to help with that and somebody who's willing to do that strategy piece with you as well. So I would say work on assembling a team and just understand it doesn't have to be one person that does that full breadth, because that would be even more of a unicorn. Actually, a lot of CPAs are not great at bookkeeping, so they're just too far removed from it. They do other things. So finding the right person for the right need and being okay with it being different people is important.
And I think that's often the case. People look for, and that happens not just in the financial side, that happens in the VA side and the marketing side, in the sales side. People are looking for people who can do everything. And I think everyone has their gift and their talent, their thing that they do really well. And if you were to find that person that could do everything, they're probably, like, I hate to say it, really a big investment.
Really,
really big investment,
Yes.
So, that's really powerful for people. Where does one start to find a good bookkeeper? Because I'm a horror story. I hear so many horror stories. Like, what should someone look for in a bookkeeper?
That's a great question. I likewise, people that get referred to me, I've seen a lot of things where it's frankly for the industry a little embarrassing that that's the service level that people are offering. So that is a challenge, is finding good bookkeeping. I just see people struggling to find that. I would say referral based is always my preference. So if you have fellow business owners, entrepreneurs that you're in a group with or that getting a referral from them as far as who's doing a great job for them is a great idea. You can always Google it, but it's tough. You just don't know what you're getting with. I think at a certain size or need level, having somebody who is an internal, like an employee, even if they're part-time, is really helpful. So there's some businesses that are just really tactile and hands-on, that it's really beneficial to have somebody down the hallway that they can go and they can talk to and ask a question or have an invoice sent or ask them to follow up with the customer. So kind of staying aware of what your needs are, how much touching you need, and is that a person that can be outsourced or is that somebody who's going to be internal? And then just hiring around that is important.
What's a good way to check to see if you've got a good bookkeeper? Because when you don't know, and here's what happened to me was when I got my mess of data from the other company, you had me go through it and make sure it looked right. You looked over it actually really quickly and you were like, hey, some of this doesn't look right. Can you go through and say what these things are for? And we actually found a ton of mistakes. And so I'm thinking to myself, gosh, have my taxes even been filed properly? I'm sure my CPA actually caught it and fixed it and didn't say anything, but my books are not accurate without having it fixed. So how do we check it?
I think that's a great question, because I do think as the business owner, I find that most people don't want to have to think about it at all. They really just want it done. And I get that. And I'm going to push back a little bit and say it is your company. It is your books. And so investing a little bit of time into doing some review is a really great idea. So asking for what I always send my clients is they always get a copy of what's called a P&L detail report with every set of financials. And that it's basically your P&L statement, but instead of just saying like software expense, office expense, it says software expense, and then it has every single transaction that was categorized as software expense for the whole P&L. So it will be 10 pages long and it's going to look really overwhelming. But if you can spend 5 minutes scanning through it, that's a really easy way to check for those categorization errors. of, and sometimes as bookkeepers, we are making educated guesses because we don't want to ask you about every single transaction. And sometimes we're wrong, and it's really just catching that as it goes. So a monthly review of that P&L detail report is going to catch some categorization issues. And that's something that as the business owner, or if you've got an ops person or somebody who's familiar and can give that a quick review, make sure everything's in the right spot. That's a really simple, easy way to catch some of those things along the way. And the other thing that I would do if it's a new firm and if you don't have the background to be able to look at your financial statements and know if they're right, I would ask, if it's a new firm, I'd ask your CPA to take a look like at your first quarter financials, because they should be able to look at it or hop in your books and take a peek and make sure that nothing super funky is going on. Ideally, we'd be checking out the bank and credit card reconciliations. But again, that's going to take a little technical background to be able to know if anything is wrong. Checking out those financial statements to make sure that the structure is appropriate and that there's nothing crazy going on.
I think that's a really good recommendation. And people don't think to do it. They really do. They want to just set it up, let it be done and forget it. And that's part of why we're having this conversation, is to maybe shake up how people are doing their business. And you might be sitting there saying, I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't have time. You don't have time not to. If I can stop buying my own story that I'm not good at numbers. And it was amazing to me how many mistakes I caught. And by the time I went through that process, the gift in it was just that I just didn't believe my story anymore. I'm like, if I can catch these mistakes with my story that I don't understand the numbers and I'm not good at numbers, anybody can do this. I didn't want to do it. That's not how I saw myself spending the time.
It's boring.
But you can do this, and it's part of your job. We just had this conversation yesterday in my group program. Sometimes we forget, as entrepreneurs, we get so used to this idea of having this freedom and flexibility and the ability to make money and do what we want when we want, that we get a little entitled to our freedom. And we forget that we have activities that we do that allow us to have the freedom and flexibility and money that we have. So it's your job.
It kind of is, You are the business owner. You have taken on that responsibility. And I've seen a situation where like the business owner gets really upset at the end of it, against the prior person. And I get that, like we can have real, super real frustrations, but also empower them to say, like, this is something that is in your control and something for you to be reviewing and making decisions about. It doesn't have to be as much of a surprise. And the other gift in it, because I think you even brought up in reviewing it, you start noticing where your money's going. And there's a lot of stuff in the year we live in, 2025, everything's on an auto subscription and it's doing this. And just getting 5% more dialed into your numbers and being like, I didn't realize I went out to eat so much, or I didn't realize I was still paying for that one app, or I'm not actually using that app, I can cancel it. There's an unexpected little gift that comes with that as well, of just being really aware of where your money's going and being able to save a little bit along the way as well.
Yeah. And that's part of what I did was I was like, well, wait, I paid this much, but I only use this one aspect of that software. I wonder if I can find a different software that I can use, and then we can have a savings there. So I think that there is value to going through and reassessing, even if it's, like you said, quarterly and not monthly. Yes, there's other things we'd rather be doing, but what you track grows. And that is how I have felt about getting really into my numbers and tracking my finances and understanding it and working with you on it. Okay, so I think I've asked everything I want to ask on this topic. Any final thoughts?
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot of great ground with it.
Yeah. I know you want access to Jenn. And here's the thing. She is got a wait list. And I'm so grateful that everything happened when it happened, because you've changed my life. But here's what we came up with. We're going to be running a workshop on May 20th at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And Jenn is going to go through some of the basics of what you need to know. She's going to work with you on making sure that you're getting the information that you need from your bookkeeper, making sure that you'll be able to ask her questions and start to get things set up and heading in the direction of being the CEO of your business who really understands and is connected to your financials, being able to make sure I'm even thinking like you could probably make some suggestions on how people are categorizing things so they can get valuable information from.
That's a huge part.
Yeah. It's not just lump sums. It's really valuable information that you can get from your business about where is the best use of your time? Where is the best use of your expenses? What should you be investing in? And you can kind of teach them how you think is really what this is about, is teaching them how you think and how you would make those decisions. Not teaching you to be an accountant. That's not the job here.
No.
But we wanted to figure out a way for you to get access. So we'll have all the details of that for you in the show notes so that you can get a little bit more access to Jenn besides just listening to the podcast here. So, Jenn, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. I love it. So much fun.
And with all of that being said, I'm sending you so much love. And if Jonathan were here, he would say, be well. Thanks for listening to the Conscious Edge podcast. Make sure you subscribe and take a moment to be kind and share this episode with someone you care about. Leave a review to help us bring more compassionate leaders building businesses and creating wealth to the table. And for show notes, head over to consciousedge.com/podcast. This podcast and the linked materials are presented solely for general information, educational, and entertainment purposes and should not be taken as personal or medical advice or any kind of mental health treatment. Please consult a medical or mental health professional if you feel you need such services. Please be advised that all investing and entrepreneurial endeavors involve risk, and the use of the education and information on this podcast and linked materials is at the user's own risk.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.